So we're in the studio and I'm going to answer a question that gets asked a lot. And it just so happens that it came from a gentleman just recently, but I've been asked this question, I don't know, a ton of times, and I want to answer the question. So this is going to be one of those humbling moments. But it has to be answered. So it has to give respect to the engineers that have worked, a lot of years and spent a lot of time in the recording studio. So this is what we're going to answer. The question is, how do I get that in your face, out of the speakers, compression, is it preamps, is it this, is it that? And a lot of people ask me that same question, and they do it in a roundabout way. How do you get that vocal to sit so clean and up front and in your face and all these things? The answer is actually a little bit different than most people want to have. A lot of engineers, when they first get going, I'm very fortunate. I started with no equipment, so I would recommend starting with no equipment. It's good for you because you learn how to use an EQ, you learn how to use a compressor in the box, you learn how to get the most out of what you have without having the best of what's out there. And the answer to this question is very simple. You can't, okay? You cannot achieve that effect without understanding EQ, compression, effects, and all the tools and all the things that we learned at recording school, but then going out and applying them, because that's what causes that, okay? It is certain gear can do it quicker. NEVE 1073s have a way of stacking nicely, so that is part of that. So if you have a NEVE 1073 or a board from NEVE or a board from API or a board from SSL or a board from Toft or Trident, they all have a certain sound, but they're really good at stacking. Some people can get into the ins and outs of a mixing board and the harmonics and how each channel has a little bit different, and it causes this perception to sound clean, where every element in the mix sounds and has its own space. But in my years doing this on some of the bigger things that I've worked on, it was a signal pass. So it was either like a 76 distressor, EQ distressor, whatever it was to get that to happen. So each element of the mix is different. So I couldn't say, hey, if you buy some NEVE channels, you're going to be A-okay. And you never know, okay? Because each mix has its own. So let's say a guy comes to me and he wants a mix where the 808 is insanely huge, okay? And he's like, don't touch my 808. I don't want you to touch any frequencies. I like how it sounds. It sounds great. It sounds good. I'm going to have a different set of challenges getting that vocal to sit in that mix than, let's say, a guy sends me one with no 808. It's got a lot of kick drum in the 120 to 200 range. It's got some beef, and it's a totally different mix. So now I have a whole different set of challenges getting that vocal to sit. So to answer your guys' question out there, it is engineering. It's understanding, okay, well, I'm going to have to shelf, I'm going to have to compress this different, the perception of this 808 with these speakers. But don't get discouraged if you're new to engineering. That's the fun part about it. You start to experience how to get this mix to sit this way or this mix to sit that way. So to answer your question about gear and preamps and compressors, I could go 100 different ways on that, but to answer the question honestly, it's the person behind the board, understanding your music. So if you are the engineer, you are the musician, to answer the question honest, it's the engineering process. And I'm thankful to the school. I went to the recording workshop and I got just the basics of the EQs and basics of compressors. They don't teach you how to listen. Okay, they don't teach you that. There's no way. That's to me, that's a God-given thing. It's like you're graduating to a new level. As you listen to more and more music, you start to realize, wow, how do they do that with the compressor? And then you study people's mixes, and then you study different compression techniques, and then you study different histories of music where like vocals used to be real tucked and they got louder, and then mixes got cleaner, and then they got louder. So you're literally you could drive yourself insane if you're chasing that tail. So just do what you feels comfortable and go for it. I just did a record It was a band, and the vocals were a little tucked for my taste. But as I listened back to them, I was like, wow, man, that's really cool because it creates this dynamic push and pull thing. So yeah, experiment with compression. Compression is what controls the dynamics. But EQ can also do that. So you could have this big sounding vocal and then you EQ it and you make it sit in the mix better. Getting it out of the way of the other elements in the mix is what causes the 3D perception. The cleaner it gets, I've actually been to the point where I've created it too clean, where you got to add a little more muffle and bring it back into the mix. So to me, there's all kinds of mixing styles. I just did a record the other day. It was a little out of my comfort zone, but I was like shaping the vocal like so much with different EQs and stuff to just sound like so tiny. It was like this little tiny thing, but that's what people wanted. It's this like small little vocal and this mix is huge, but that's what they wanted. So yeah, to get that in your face vocal, I'll give you a little bit of an understanding. Get a great get a great mic. Understand the EQ and the low mids and the low end. Understand compressors, which ones can create that. The distressor is an incredible one. The 76 is an incredible one. In the box, you can mess with limiters and mess with the EQ and mess with compression in the box. But that's how you get it to stick out of the speakers. Now, I will say this. If you have a poor quality preamp and a poor quality microphone, your job became a lot harder, because now what's really amazing about these lower quality, for that purpose, let me put it that way, for that purpose, you're not going to have this big sounding vocal that you captured with a great preamp and a great mic. You're going to have this really tiny sounding vocal that you captured with a not so good pre and a not so good mic. So yeah, you're at a disadvantage. So you're going to be doing things to try to make it sound bigger. In our STEM service, we actually do that. We actually take it and re-record it through like a NEVE 1073 or a pair of Vox boxes or an API, whatever it is, whatever's going to work. And then we give you a fighting chance. But yeah, that's the answer to that question. There is no like magic wand where you can say this one's going to work and this one's going to cause punch. There's certain techniques that you can use, but that's about as far as I can go, and just practice engineering. It's a fun thing to practice, man. It's like a sport to me. And the better I get at it, there was a time in my life where it was not easy. I was ruining stuff, I was just overdoing stuff. And then I learned, wow, okay. So don't fight yourself if you're at that stage in your life, mixing wise, where you're doing these things and the results are horrible and they're trash. Don't give up, man, because that's part of the learning experience, You got to ruin somebody's song. You got to ruin a few mixes. But yeah, that's why people say, they'll call me up and be like, Doug, that guy just got out of recording school, man. He trashed my mix. I'm like, yeah, he probably did. He probably did because they're not used to the tools. Now they're dangerous. It's like giving me a chainsaw, You'd be like, oh, dude, put it down. So it's like a compressor and an EQ, they're the same way. You compress everything. You're over squashing everybody's stuff. You're taking the life out of it. Your attack and release is wrong, and you're a dangerous person at that point. So I hope that helped. So yeah, that gives a big value to the mixing engineers, and the mastering engineers and the tracking engineers of this world. It's hard to do it all. It really is. I remember doing my own vocals. I would always bury my own vocals, It's really crazy how you do that. You bury your vocal behind everything because you're subconsciously hearing things that other people aren't hearing. Yeah, it's a weird thing. So that's another subject for another day. So hopefully this whole thing helped you guys. But that's the answer to that question.